Welcome everybody to This Week in Apple. It is Andrew here. You can find me on Twitter at Andrew_OSU, and this is This Week in Apple, where I cover the most important Apple news that you need to know for the week. And this is a special episode for a couple reasons. We're going to touch on WWDC rumors that we need to care about before Monday, and I have another special guest for you guys who's promptly laid down. This is Mosby, named after Ted Mosby from How I Met Your Mother. Josh Radnor is a native of Cleveland, Ohio, so we thought it was an appropriate name, as well as a pretty entertaining show. So, yeah. He's only here because I stole his ball. Otherwise, he would not be here with me. He would be hanging out with his mother. Now that the kids are out of the room, let's get back to the news that you need to care about. So thank you for hanging out with us today. Having some, morning coffee. If you're watching this in the afternoon, maybe this is just like a, afternoon pick-me-up. In the evening, maybe this is a little more boozy than it would be in the morning. Whatever, your preference. But we're going to start off the episode talking about WWDC. We're going to move on to recent rumors, following up the end of the episode with actual news. So let's go ahead and kick it off with WW. Now, there's a lot of stuff that we can expect and some stuff that we cannot expect come Apple Development Conference. So the biggest things that we can, of course, expect, because this is a developers conference, is software updates. So Apple will issue, the first big betas of iOS, iPadOS, macOS, tvOS, and watchOS at this update. And they're going to see the first betas to developers. So we're going to see iOS 15, iPadOS 15, watchOS 8, tvOS 15, and macOS 12, I believe, are the model numbers that we are expecting for these big updates. This is not a surprise. This is pretty much, written in stone that we're going to get these updates at this conference. So that is nothing new here. But there are some things that we may or may not see. I feel like we should at least spend a couple minutes talking about. First up is Apple Silicon. So we are 1 year into a 2-year transition to move all of Apple's Macs to Apple Silicon. It makes sense for Apple to do it sooner rather than later. And we know some things like the Mac Pro are going to be the last machines to move over, because Apple does need to have that be the most powerful machine. So it'll need the highest end, Apple Silicon that it creates. So that'll be coming down the line. And right now we're sitting with an M1 processor. So it is possible, because Apple announced the transition at WWDC last year, that we're going to get a new update on Apple Silicon. I mean, we're for sure going to get some update on Apple Silicon, even if it's just Tim Cook saying, and this is just the beginning. But we're going to get some update on Apple Silicon. We may see an M2 or an M1X revealed, touting some of the big power that these chips can do. And at the same time, Apple may sneak peek or even fully announce a 14-inch or a 16-inch MacBook Pro. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the rumor section, but it is a possibility. I would not hold out your hopes. I would not guarantee it. Bloomberg was kind of hinting that it would come out as soon as this summer. And if Apple's going to announce it at an event, the developer conference seems like a good time to do it, especially since so many people there rely on MacBook Pros. So it would be a perfect time to be kind of announcing that specific hardware. Other things that have been in the works that we may or may not see, there's always a chance, something to do with HomePod. There's a few reasons here. We've heard recent rumors that Apple's working on a HomePod with some sort of display, like some kind of Echo Show type device where you have like a dashboard of your home, you can control your home, play music, all that. So basically a screen and a speaker all combined into one. If that was the case, Apple would need developer support behind it. They would likely include the ability for developers to create their own applications to run on this device. We had also seen recently in a job posting on Apple's website, they're looking for engineers for Home OS. Perhaps Home OS is what's running on this HomePod iPad hybrid that Apple may or may not be working on. Now, while we may not get that hardware, we may see a sneak peek of it, but Apple could, the bigger thing there is just announce it in some capacity and let developers start working on software and applications to run on it. So there is a chance that that may happen. In similar vein with Apple Glass. Apple Glass has been rumored for some time, and Apple seems to be inching more and more closer to releasing that. And if that is the case, again, they're going to need dev support behind it. So similar to how Apple has done other big transitions or other big new products, they have to kind of pre-announce the product ahead of time, like how they did with the Apple Watch. There's a big delay between when Apple, allowed developers to start creating apps for Apple Watch and when the Apple Watch actually hit the street. So we could see something similar like that with Apple Glass. I don't think Apple Glass is going to be at this year's conference. It could be next year's conference. We'll have to see. But it's something like keep an eye on, keep an ear to the ground. It may or may not happen, but don't hold out your hopes that that's going to be a guarantee by any means. So that's what we were expecting and not expecting to see at WWDC this year. Now let's go ahead and talk about some recent rumors. And there were some juicy ones coming out this morning, including reports on a next generation iPad Pro. I know, we just got this iPad Pro, and here is Bloomberg getting everyone excited for a 2022 iPad Pro. So this new iPad Pro looks to be possibly the first one with a glass back and wireless charging. So they say it could be like a glass sandwich design. So glass on the front, glass on the back, and then it would support wireless charging. There's a bunch of different possibilities for how wireless charging could work. We don't have details on that. Apple did acquire a company a few years back that would allow up to 100 watts or something over wireless charging with like a 65 millimeter coil or something crazy like that, a ridiculous amount of power. So Apple could do something like that. They could stick to something like MagSafe, where it's a little bit weaker or shorter, smaller amount of power being drawn in compared to a cable. It's a very likely possibility, but it opens up a lot of possibilities for accessories to launch with iPad Pro. That part makes me excited because I like the idea of being able to dock this and just charge. Now, if anyone remembers this thing, so Apple's the smart connector on the iPad Pros, right? There was this Logitech base, the Logi base, something along those lines, where you could just take your iPad Pro, dock it in, and you just set it on there, and you would use the smart connector on the back to charge your iPad. I thought that was slick as heck, and I loved it. But it was super short-lived, and we never saw it again. No one ever really mentions it. But I thought that was such a cool thing, and I don't understand why Apple never did anything like that again. But with the new magnetic, possibly MagSafe support on the new iPads, possibly wireless charging support on the new iPads, it opens that possibility. So I am holding out a little bit hope that we'll see something similar to that on these new iPad Pros. Alongside iPad Pros, Apple is working on a new version of the iPad mini. Sounds like they are going to be doing a home buttonless iPad mini. Something we've heard about. If you remember an early episode of This Week in Apple, I talked about kind of the dummy unit that we had gotten that have historically been very accurate and was not home buttonless. It still had a home button on it. So I am super excited that there may be a version without a home pod or a home button coming out. So we're just gonna have to hold our breath for that one. But some new juicy HomePod rumors or some juicy iPad rumors coming down the line. It's too early, guys. It's too early. Maybe there is booze in my coffee and I just don't know about it. Going back a little bit to the Mac, we had MacBook Pro stuff that we talked about when we were covering WWDC. And I don't know when to expect these new computers. We're expecting both a redesigned 14-inch MacBook Pro as well as a 16-inch MacBook Pro. We've talked about a lot of the stuff we expect, such as maybe mini LED displays. Maybe we're going to get a return of a lot of ports, including SD card readers, HDMI, and some sort of magnetic charging capabilities to these machines. There's a lot of stuff that we've been kind of holding out hope that we're going to see on them, but we have not gotten firm release dates on when we're going to see them. It could be sooner than we think because new regulatory filings that released this week kind of show off that 16-inch MacBook Pro. Not the 14, but the 16-inch. To go along with that, we heard from Bloomberg, I believe, said they could be released as soon as this summer. Could make WWDC a possibility. But at the same time, we heard, I think, from Digitimes saying that based on mini LED supplies, that the 16-inch should go into production in late 2021, and the 14-inch would go into production in early 2022, which would be outside of the window of a summer launch. So I'm not sure what to make of all these recent rumors, but the fact that it's in the regulatory database kind of points to a sooner rather than later. Like, I don't think it's going to be a 2022 launch for the 16 and the 14. I think especially the 16 could come earlier than that. So we will have to see, but it seems like we are getting closer to that actually being released. Finally, the last rumor to touch on is on the iPhone 13. John Prosser is out again. He released some schematics for Apple's unannounced iPhone successor. And aside from the schematics that show that the device is going to be a little bit thicker than the prior generation, that thickness is largely to be driven by new batteries. So the batteries are going to be significantly larger in the new iPhone. And it's not crazy for that. And I want to be clear that this does not mean longer battery life. Apple's not increasing the batteries by 50% and then giving us all much longer battery life. No, we have heard that the new phones may have like that 120 hertz display, and we had heard that they may have an always-on display. Both of those are fairly power hungry. So to include these new features, Apple could be looking to beef up the battery, similar to how the new iPad Pro was thicker and had a larger battery to deal with the mini LED display that it's powering. We could see something similar going on with the new iPhone. So slightly thicker, bigger battery capacity, not necessarily more battery life, but it does line up with the rumors that we had heard for the iPhone 13. So that brings us to news. Let's talk about this, guys. So first up, AirTag. Apple's AirTag. Apple has made some changes to how AirTag's privacy features work. So AirTag, in its previous existing state, when it was away from its owner and it was following somebody, it would take up to 72 hours before it would send out an alert saying that an AirTag is traveling with you. And there was a bunch of privacy experts that came out and said that that was not cutting it. It was not enough. There was a big window there where people could be stalked and it would be fine, and AirTag wouldn't notify them. So Apple has changed that. They've now issued a new firmware update for AirTag, and this firmware update drops that window from 72 hours to a random time between 8 and 24. So it's not a set time, because then someone stalking could just make sure they stay inside of that window and get them back, but there is a chance between 8 and 24 hours that it'll send out the alert that an AirTag or unidentified Find My object is following you. So that has changed, that is new. Apple has also announced a new app coming to Android that will allow Android users to know if an AirTag or Find My device is following them. And I think this is weird. Flip everything around. Could you imagine being an Apple user, Google releasing a Bluetooth tracker, and then telling all iPhone users, hey, if you want to make sure you're not being stalked or tracked, you have to download this app and keep it on your device so you know. That sounds kind of weird and scary, and I understand what Apple's trying to do, but it's just a weird thought if that was flipped around or if Samsung had done that. It doesn't sit super well with me. I mean, it's a good idea, but just a weird implementation. I feel like it should be more like the COVID stuff, where they just kind of combine their skill sets and have like a general practice of monitoring for items tracking you, whether it's AirTags or Tiles or any other Bluetooth device that may be doing that job. So I don't know, but new firmware update is out now for AirTag. Just make sure you got those updated. It just does it in the background whenever you connect to them, so it's no big deal. Apple issued a new round of betas this week. We got second betas for macOS 11.5, iOS 14.7, iPadOS 14.7, watchOS 7.6, and tvOS 14.7. Lots of numbers here, and they're starting to deviate, and it makes it difficult to remember what they are. But yeah, second round of betas going out to developers and public beta testers. We saw additional leaked documents from the Epic trial that concluded already, but it does confirm a few different products that were never released by Apple. There's some ones from Steve Jobs confirming that Apple was possibly looking at a tablet-style Mac, as well as a 15-inch MacBook Air, and even a Super Nano for the iPod line. Some of these products, like the Super Nano, may have been released just under a different name. Other ones, like the 15-inch MacBook Pro or 15-inch MacBook Air, just never saw the light of day. But it's interesting to see unreleased products, at least in name only, coming from Apple. In terms of Apple TV news, Mosquito Coast has been renewed. It is coming back for a second season, so if you like that show, get excited. Season 2 is under works. And for those Ted Lasso fans out there, me included, we are getting some official merch on podcast, creator of the show, that I've forgotten his name. See, I should have notes. You'd think that this iPad here would be full of like super helpful notes that would let me look things up, and it's not. I can just, well, I guess now I have to look it up. Please hold. Please hold. This is where like some hold music would come on. Anyway, Bill Lawrence, Scrubs creator, also creator of Ted Lasso, he went on podcast and said that official merch is dropping ahead of season 2. So be excited for that if you are a fan of Ted Lasso. Last couple things to mention. Well, I guess really one last thing. Like I have topics. I have general topics on here, but nothing more specific than that. Last thing was just some new product releases for the week. The biggest one of which is this guy over here on the wall behind me. These are the Nanoleaf Elements wood look hexagons. Name rolls off your tongue, but I really like them. They are super cool. They work with HomeKit and they have a bunch of different lighting effects. I think for a lot of spaces, they're super calming and not nearly as techy as bright white panels you see from Nanoleaf or LifeX or many of the other companies out there. So there's a few other products released this week. Just check the notes below and you'll see if there's anything else that catches your eye. So let me know what you guys think. I appreciate you all very much for hanging out today. Share the show with your friends. If you know somebody else who needs to catch up on Apple News, easy to digest, just the headlines, share this with them, please, please, please. Otherwise, stay tuned. We've got a lot more videos coming. It's WWDC next week. I've got a lot of stuff to show you guys. Hang tight, and I'll see you guys soon.